All right, it's time. Can I do a quick survey? How many people drew the thing or tried to draw it or cheated on their drawing and downloaded something from the internet? You know me, I just drew a diagram. I'm just trying to figure out where is everybody. All right, let's review the first vision. Right, chapters 1 through 3 are the first vision, and Jesus meets John on earth and commissions him to write to the churches. And Jesus is intimately familiar with the state of the churches. And so as he's talking, he has a message to each one of these churches, and he is either correcting them or encouraging them or doing both. Now the question is, why are chapters 1 through 3 up front? Why did Jesus deal with the present condition of the churches before he started talking about the future events? Because that's what Revelation is. We know from Revelation 1:1, this is the things that are going to take place soon. Why would Jesus go after the churches and say, let's talk about you? Yeah, to prepare them for what's coming, right? We know that some of these churches were not necessarily being fully faithful. They weren't fully committed. They weren't depending on Jesus. And so, oh my goodness, with what is coming in the future, they need to be totally committed. They need to be leaning hard on Jesus. And if they don't do this, remember, what's the role of the church? Yeah, they're like the lampstands. Remember the lampstands? For them to be showing God's light to the world, they've got to be healthy to be able to do that. And then the other question I said was like, well, what if it was me? If you told me all this stuff that's coming in the future, and then you said, now let's talk about you, I just go like, yeah, whatever. I'm so focused on what's going to happen. And so I'm really glad chapters 1 through 3 come first, because I think we're the same way, right? And that's my only caution. Yeah, Aaron. Oh. Yeah, Aaron has a good point. A lot of times we remember the first thing that we're told. And so that's a great thing, because that's what we need to do. Because next week we're going to get into the more exciting stuff, and we must not forget what we have learned in chapters 1 through 3. That is foundational for us. And tonight is going to be foundational as well. All right. You ready? Chapter 4, verse 1. After this, I looked. And so right away, we are now transitioning from vision number 1 to vision number 2. And if you looked at that big diagram, we're moving from the first block to the second block. And the second block has a lot of stuff in it. It is the mamma jamma vision of Revelation. And what does John see and hear right now, and how does it kind of connect to what we've seen in 1 through 3? What does he see? A door opening to heaven. And then what does he hear? Yeah, a voice like a trumpet. And who is the trumpet voice? Yes, Jesus, the first voice that sounds like a trumpet. And you immediately all went, chapter 1, verse 10, the voice like the trumpet is identified as Jesus. I love this. As we go through Revelation, there's going to be a lot of stuff that we go, I'm not really sure what that is. But there's a lot of stuff where we are told what it is. So we always want to be looking and saying, has Revelation told me this already, what it is? And in fact, in your notebooks up in the front, I put, here's what the numbers are. Every time every time Revelation tells us, like, this item, this refers to this, there's another table where you can start recording that so that you've got your key, your answer key to get through the book. All right. Why change location from earth to heaven? Why is that important? Because couldn't Jesus just continue the conversation on Patmos? Okay, he wants John to be in heaven and see him for himself. And why is that important? Yeah, he wants him to see it. It prepares him. And part of it is like it totally changes John's perspective, right? You could tell me about heaven right here, and I would go, okay, great, I know about heaven. But I have a hunch when we get to heaven, our minds are going to be blown, right? It totally changes your perspective. And I think John will never be the same again. He will now always think of things related to the Lord from the perspective of heaven, because he's now seen it. And so perspective matters, because without the right perspective, we see or we interpret things very wrong. If you sent me a text message, and a couple of you sent me a text message this week, and I didn't respond, and then some of you may have sent me another text message, and another text message, and another one, and I did not respond. And from your perspective, I was either rude or I was ignoring you. Actually, it is rude to ignore you, so I guess those go together. But here's what happened in the Gleaton household this week. I lost my phone, and then the battery died. And I was not ignoring you. Eddie and I are going crazy looking for this phone because it drives me nuts to be cut off from friends and family. So perspective matters, right? And starting in chapter 6, we're going to see some unsettling events unfolding on earth. And from our earthly perspective, when we actually see those things happening, a Christian could conclude a few things. God is out of control, right? God doesn't care about me, or God is punishing me. My dad was a lifelong Christian, and he received a diagnosis that was like, well, you're probably going to die, and it's probably going to be soon. And my dad, the Christian, was said, I have been a good Christian. Why is God doing this to me? In other words, why is God punishing me? When we see hard stuff that we don't understand, it is easy to think those things. And we need the perspective. So in chapters 4 and 5, Jesus is going to provide the right perspective, the perspective from heaven. Now, what does John see in heaven? If you did your homework, like what did you draw? What are the major pieces of furniture? What are the major characters? It's a throne room. And we know that because there's a big throne in the middle of it. Right? And then there's 24 more thrones around it. And is it just a throne? Or is there a person there? Yeah, there's one person sitting on the throne. And when you're sitting on the throne, what are you doing? You are reigning. And so right away, John is being confronted with the fact that there is no doubt God is reigning from heaven. He is totally in control. And then before the throne, there are 7 torches, the 7 spirits of God. We had said back in maybe chapter 1, they're the 7 spirits of God is how God is acting in the world. So God is on the throne, he's reigning, and we see the spirits. This is how he is active in the world. And then what else is on there? There's rainbow gemstones. Let's talk about critters first. There's 24 elders, and they're each have their own throne. They're around that. Yeah, and then Dawn. Yes, hold that 1 second. You're like, she nailed it. Okay, what else? Besides the 24 elders, there's 4 odd-looking creatures, right? And if you drew out the diagram, everything revolves around that throne, right? The throne is in the middle. It's surrounded by 4 living beings. They're surrounded by 24 elders. So there is no doubt. What is the focus in this room? That one throne that God is reigning from. Everything goes around that. And so let's talk for a minute about the one on the throne. What does John see? What does he point out? Okay, hold that. That's coming in chapter 5. There's a rainbow. And what's the deal about a rainbow? It's God's promise. Yeah, the rainbow, if we went back to Genesis 9, after the flood, and God displays a rainbow, it is his covenant with his creation, right? That he is, all right? Yeah. Yeah, the rainbow, the whole reason he's seeing this rainbow is this light coming from the throne. And I'm looking to see if I have the... Yeah, Ezekiel 1. Ezekiel 1 has another description of this throne room, and there it talks about the brightness that is in this throne room. So that gives us the rainbow. Okay, what else? Somebody had talked about gemstones. And what's the deal with gemstones? Who has gemstones? Lots and lots of gemstones. Yeah. Royalty. Right? Kings at this time, they would have lots of gemstones as symbols of their wealth and power. So again, so Amy, that's what we're saying. It's not about the gemstones. It's about what they tell us about the one on the throne. He is heavenly riches beyond compare. He is powerful. And why doesn't John just see the one sitting on the throne? Why talk about all these other things? He's describing them. Yeah, I mean, lots of characters in the Bible found out man in his current condition cannot see God and live. It is such a powerful thing to see that, like, we would probably be obliterated on the spot. And in fact, Moses was the first one to hit this. He wants to see God, and in Exodus 33, God says, "You cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live." We will when we get to heaven. Paul tells us, now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now, and then he goes, I shall know God fully, even as I have been fully known by God now. Isn't that amazing? We'll actually get to see God. But for now, this is what John is capable of seeing. And so he's describing God's power and light and wealth all as he can. Now, the elders, yeah, there's 24. And Dawn picked up on 24. Well, Margaret Feinberg would tell you that, but if you had looked on page 1 in your notebook, page 1 has the table of what all the different numbers mean. And I don't have it here. But 12, did you get it? 12 is the complete number of God's people. Think about the 12 tribes of Israel, right? It's all God's people. The 12 apostles represent the New Testament church. And now we have 24, so it's 12 plus 12. So it's all God's people, Old Covenant and New Covenant. So these elders are not all God's people, but they are representing God's people before the throne. And the reason we say that they are not actually the saints is because, well, first of all, they're in heaven right now when the church is still on earth. They also, we'll find in chapter 5, they're holding the prayers of the saints. They're holding the incense bowls. And we're told the incense is the prayers of the saints. So they are offering that to God. In other words, they're serving a priestly type of function in heaven. And then in 5:9, they talk about the saints. And they don't use we language. They talk about them, those saints. So they're not saints. They're probably some sort of angelic being. And so it's not a surprise that they wear white, right? They're holy. What do we do with the golden crowns? Because don't saints get crowns, right? We hit that in 2:10, I think. Yeah, they're going to give them to Jesus' feet. But first I want to say, like the crowns, remember we said a saint would get, if you endure and you finish the race, you're given the crown of life. And we said those were like the athletic crowns, like the wreaths that the athletes would get. This is the exact same type of crown, except they're gold. So it seems that they have some position of honor there. and they sit on a throne. And thrones refer to some sort of ruling authority, right? They have some sort of authority that they have that is derivative from God's authority. And what is the main thing these guys do? Yeah, they worship. They worship all the time. We're always seeing them falling down before the throne. And so John has now taken in the 24 elders, and he looks back at the throne in the middle, and what stands out to him there? We're at verse 5 now. Yeah, the rumbling of thunder and lightning. Yes. Yes, Dawn is exactly right. If you think back to Mount Sinai after the Exodus, and God comes down on the mountain and there's all this lightning and thunder and everything else. A lot of times in the Bible, when you see lightning and thunder, it's associated with God's presence. And again, this is another indication of God's incredible power that he has. And so we have all this lightning and thunder coming from the throne. In other words, the throne is, if there was any doubt who's on the throne, it is God's presence is right there on the throne. The creator and judge in all his power is there. And then what is before the throne? The sea of glass, right? There's the 7 torches of fire too. We talked about them, but the sea of glass like crystal, and it is. It's like it's before the throne. It's like it's the floor of the throne room. And I was like, why do I care about the floor? Right? But actually, think about it. Put yourself there. You are in God's throne room. There is all this noise from the thunder. There's the light from the lightning. And then you got a glass floor. And what happens when you have a glass floor? Everything is bouncing off it. So you are John, and lightning is bad enough when it's, like when you see it at night and it flashes, you're like, whoa, sometimes. John is seeing it multiplied because it is bouncing off the floor. The thunder is bouncing off of the floor, and it is overwhelming. And so, I'm thinking when bad things happen, we're going to see things happen in the coming chapters. When stuff is happening all around me, my goodness, when I watch the news in the morning, when I saw Iran being bombed, I'm like, what is going on? And I can envision that the whole Middle East is going to blow up. And you think, is God really in control? Like, it looks like things are about to get out of hand. And boy, when you experience what John is experiencing, this overwhelming power coming from the one on the throne, yeah, God's not out of control, no matter what it looks like. The correct perspective, the heavenly perspective, is that God's holiness and power and authority as he rules his creation is just overwhelming. Lori. Yeah. Yeah, so Zumi's Lori saying she never pictured heaven as having a floor. And to be honest, I didn't either, right? We tend to think of heaven as like we're all in the clouds now. Actually, I cut it out of here. But there are other places where this sea, this floor appears in the Bible. When God, same thing, when God came down on Mount Sinai and they look up and they see it under the throne, here they go, it is a pavement of sapphire stone. It's another gemstone that's the floor. Ezekiel, in his vision of the throne room, he's looking up and he sees the floor under the angels there. And interesting, when Moses and the gang make the temple and they're told to make it according to the instructions God gave them, that it is an image of what's in heaven. And one of the temple furnishings that they're to make is the sea of cast metal. It's this gigantic basin of bronze full of water and is representing this floor that is in heaven. So It's all over. And you'll see, Lori, when we get to the end, because we think about what happens, what does it mean to be in heaven forever? Well, it's not up in the clouds. We'll see it as a new heaven and a new earth that God will be living with us physically on a remade earth. So, all right. So much for the floor. We good? All right. The living creatures. What about them? What'd you notice about them? They have wings. They have lots and lots and lots of eyes. They see everything. And so we might think, just like this, the Spirit, we're told in Revelation, sees everything. Maybe these are not the Spirit, but maybe they are also agents of God. They see everything, which enables them to serve. What are our different, yeah, Barb. Yeah. Yep. They are. I was talking with Cher about this. So I debated whether I should give you Ezekiel in your homework or not, but I just, it's too much. So in Ezekiel, there are 4 cherubim, 4 angels, and they have, but they look a little bit different. They're similar but different. And so in Revelation, the angels they are covered with eyes. And in Ezekiel, they're on these cool wheels, and the wheels have eyes everywhere. And the point is, remember, we're in figurative language. And so we are not making specific statements about how many eyes does one of these beings have, right? Or are they on the being themselves or on the wheels? It's figurative, so we're going to ask, what does the fact that they have tons of eyes tell us about them? They're all seeing, okay? And so we got 2 different guys writing the same truth. They may describe it differently, but they're giving us the exact same thing to learn about them. I don't know if that's where you were going, but if you read Ezekiel 1, you'd immediately go like, they look a little different. But the ones in Ezekiel, they also are different in that each one has 4 different faces. And here, each creature only has 1 face. But between them, they have all 4 of those faces. And so that is going to be the key thing we're going to hook onto here. Not where is the face, but what are the faces and what do they represent? Does that make sense? Okay, so what are the 4 faces? There's a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle in flight. And why these 4 animals? Yes, Sandy. All right, so she's talking about each one of these creatures is different in some way, right? They're definitely unique. There's no overlap. We don't have a lion and a tiger together, anything like that. They're very different. A lion, known for being rather ferocious, right? And they're a wild animal. Yes, a wild animal. In fact, they are the king of the beast, right? All right, ox. Is an ox a wild animal? Yeah, it's a domesticated animal. It is known for its strength. So I have the chief wild animal and the chief domesticated animal. Then we got man. Man is unique in that he's made in God's image. And then I have an eagle. What's different from an eagle to those other 3? Yeah, he's flying. And the eagle is, he's to birds what a lion is to the wild animals, right? You don't want an eagle to come after you. Did you have something, Sarah? Okay. All right. So each one is a different type of earthly creature. And when we look at these different groupings, when we take them all together, how much of God's created creatures do they cover? everything, right? They cover earth, they cover air, they cover wild, they cover domesticated, and they cover God's image altogether. There's no fish. Yeah, no sharks. These are these four. But, and I don't know why he left out fish. But, huh? Is it debatable there's a sea in, well, there's a sea of the floor. I was expecting the question, does this mean that there's animals in heaven? Yeah, we'll talk about that another day. I vote yes. I don't know if I'm going to have my cat in heaven, but I'm going to have a cat in heaven. Yes, go ahead. That's my opinion. But I'll defend it from the Bible, so. All right, so, yeah. They could represent Jesus' characteristics. Yeah. But I'll tell you, but hold on with me. I don't think the text is pointing in that direction, right? We could say that Jesus is like a lot of things in his creation, right? He's powerful, he's smart, he's all these different things. But stick with me, because I think the theme that we're going through is the creation, okay? So, and beyond that, it's speculation, because it doesn't tell us that this is Jesus, right? Okay, what do these four creatures do? Yeah, they worship too. Everybody's worshiping, right? And I wrote down, they worship the Lord 24/7. That's all they do. They worship constantly. They acknowledge him as, you see, holy, holy, holy? You know why he does holy, holy, holy? You can be holy, and then in this language, the way if you say you're holy, holy, that means you're holier. And if you say holy, 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 it means you're the holiest. So that's what they're saying. He's the holiest. And they say he's almighty. He is all powerful. Nobody is more powerful than him. Not only is he totally the most holy, he's completely pure, completely perfect. And then he goes, he was, he is, and he is to come, which refers to what? Past, present, and future. He's eternal. Okay? And so we get this thing, whenever the four living creatures worship, then the elders also worship, which means everybody is worshiping all the time. And what in verses 9 through 11, what do we learn from them about worship? What is their deal? They talk about God's attributes, but then what do they say, worthy are you to receive glory, honor, and power. Okay. But then they talk about why. Why are you worthy of worship? Well, yeah, up in verse 8, they say, holy, 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 who was and is to come. They're discussing his attributes. But in verse 11, they talk about why is he worthy to receive our glory, honor, and power? Because he created all things. That is what makes him especially worthy of the worship of these created beings. It's because of what God has done. He created them. There is this creator-created relationship that they have. And so the creatures worship their creator. And isn't it cool? We are saying here in heaven, this is perfect worship. And as we're looking at the perfect worship, this is where I want to get to, like the important theme, not just of worship, because, my goodness, we've been seeing a lot of worship, but this theme of creation, right? We have the holy, powerful God on his throne that brought creation into existence. The creatures just said that. And then we have a rainbow around his throne that is his covenant with his creation. And then we have around the throne, then, beyond that, we have representatives from all of his creation with him in the throne room. Representatives of the different types of creatures, representative of his creatures from all time, right? Old covenant, new covenant, all of God's people there. And we have the creation worshiping the creator. And, again, I was thinking, when life is not going well, and we may be tempted to think God doesn't care, but this passage is showing us the right perspective that this all-powerful God, he created us, but he didn't just walk away and leave his creation. It's like in his throne room, he's just loaded with creation reminders all over and creation representatives. His number one concern is his creation. He loves being with his created beings. And you can imagine that he so much desires that his fallen creation be back the way he created it to be. And so even in the midst of all this stuff that's going on, we can gladly worship our Creator knowing that we are super important to us and he longs for his creation. So, we were saying that chapters 1 through 3, God wanted the churches to have a correct view of themselves and how they were supposed to be and how they relate to him in the world. Here, we get this next vision, because the heavenly vision, because he wants the church to have a correct view, not just of themselves, but of God, right? That this God is mind-blowingly powerful and he cares deeply about his creation and he is totally in control over it. And so when we're looking, things are out of control. It's like the Middle East is blowing up. God is very concerned. He cares very much about his creation. Lori. Yeah. Well, the issue is not the ego. It is, so you never hear him on here. No. And I want to come back because I'm not sure I'm going to answer it well tonight. But you never hear him saying, do this, right? It is that what you're seeing is a response of the creation to their creator. If you saw whichever person in the world you think the most highly of and you saw them, you might be like, I saw. So Eddie and I, a number of years ago, we went to England. And the Queen, we were outside Buckingham Palace, and the Queen came out in one of those super duper carriages, and she goes by. And as she goes by me, she goes, and for years, I have told people, like, the Queen waved to me. And it's a little bit of the same thing. You are in the throne room of the God of the universe, the creator of the universe, and you're like, and look at how he is. And it is the response that comes. But we don't see him going like, we will see that later on for those who are like, the heck with you, God, go ahead. Yeah. So if you remember Zoomies, Lori's talking about God created us, he knows how we're going to respond. You have to go back to the very beginning in Genesis, right? God created us to be in relationship with him. It was to be this love relationship. And so he didn't make us for a purpose. Like, was God incomplete and therefore he made us because he needed somebody to make himself feel loved? Like, no, the Bible teaches us that God is complete in and of himself. But he's a God that loves relationships. So what brings him joy? To be in relationship with people that he creates. So, well, yeah. Aaron. Yeah, Aaron's talking about how in the Bible, a lot of times God does something notable, flashy, to get his point across. He has certainly done that here. Anyway, but this is the perspective of God from heaven and what he is like. And that perspective matters, right? For beings that are in the presence of the all-powerful God, the natural response is worship. But maybe not from an earthly perspective. I think as Christians, how many of you worship like the beings in heaven worship? 24/7, all the time, just like we don't, right? Sometimes it's easy to lose sight of this all-powerful creator who loves his creation, and we get distracted by things that just pale in comparison to him, if we're honest. And for people who reject God, it's an entirely different thing, right? They refuse to worship him. They persecute his people, and we'll learn in Revelation it's about to get worse. And so the world is not at all as God intended it to be. And so it's really easy to ask, is God really Like, is God really concerned? Because it's been this way for like forever. And is he really in control? And why in the world does God not fix his creation? Which leads us to chapter 5. What does John now see? And I apologize, I think we're going to run late because we're having good discussion. I'm going to try to get us out of here as soon as we can. What does John now see? In chapter 5, verse 1. The scroll in the hand of the one on the throne. And I love it. It's just like John has been overwhelmed, and it's like, here's God holding out this little scroll, waiting for it to be noticed. And it is written on front and on back. It is jam-packed with content and is sealed with 7 seals. Why would you seal a scroll, period? And then why would you seal it with 7 seals? Was that? Yes, so the wrong person doesn't see it. And then you seal it with 7 seals because you want to make sure it is like perfectly secure, because 7 is perfect, right? It's perfectly secure. And yeah, Bethany. Oh yeah, the seal might be sealed, the wax seal might be sealed with the king's seal. Yeah. Yep. And if we do a survey of scrolls in the Bible, a lot of times the seals contain future events, especially when they're written by a prophet. So we have a seal. It is likely full of information about future events, especially because we know that's what the topic of Revelation is going to be. And it has been sealed until the right time, the time of the end. And now it is time to unseal it. Now, if you were going to unseal this, and you were sitting there going, God's creation is sure messed up, what might be inside of this scroll? How to fix it. Exactly. And and so that is going to require, we might use the word judgment, right? Dealing with those who rebel against God and who destroy his creation. And if we were to peek ahead to chapter 6 and keep going, we would go, yep, the scroll sure enough includes judgment and what the events of judgment are going to be. And what is the big question when it comes to opening the scroll? Who is worthy to open the scroll and initiate the judgment? And what is the problem? No one is worthy. Did anybody think this was odd? Like there's all the heavenly beings, they're not worthy. What about the one on the throne? I was reading that this week. I'm like, oh my gosh, the one on the throne is not worthy to open the seal. Isn't that wild? He's certainly powerful enough. He could just rip those babies right off there. But he's not worthy. There is some qualification that makes someone worthy to open this seal. And there's nobody in the heavenly thing. So if it's not the creator and it's not the heavenly creation representatives, then what are we left with? Nobody in heaven. Well, the 4 creatures are in heaven. We're left with the people with the creation itself, right? We're with people. So we could start at the beginning of people and we could say, like, well, what about Adam? He was God's his first representative on earth, and he was tasked with exercising God's dominion. How'd that work out? Bad, right? He rebelled. Adam is part of the problem. In fact, you could say he's like kind of the start of everything. And every single person after Adam has that same flaw. And so John just starts weeping. And I suspect he was so kind of stressed by all this stuff that when we hit this roadblock, he's just like he can't handle it anymore. He just starts crying. And nobody is worthy to bring judgment. And so what is the solution then? Some elder comes up and goes, I got the answer, John. Who's worthy? Yeah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David. And both of those are messianic titles. They refer to a coming king, a descendant of King David, the future king of Israel. Now, this one would be worthy in part because he's human, right? He is one of those earthly, he's a member of the creation. He's a full participant in God's creation. He is God, he's the king. He's God's reigning representative. And if we look, so who's the Lion of Judah? We can look ahead. It's Jesus, right? Paul tells us, Romans 15 is he brings up and is going to say that Jesus is that king. And what is unique about Jesus? What's his relationship with sin? He didn't sin. He is the only one who conquered sin. Adam was conquered by sin, and Jesus conquered sin. So out of all men, Jesus would be the only one that's worthy to open the scroll. And I want to say, I'm really glad that Jesus is the one that got picked, that was deemed worthy to open the scroll containing all these judgments, because I want to be judged fairly. I don't want to be judged by somebody like Adam, who would hold me to a standard that he couldn't meet, right? He'd just be saying, I'm the judge, so tough noogies, you get held to this standard, even though I couldn't do it. And I don't want to be judged by somebody who's not human. I could be judged by the one on the throne, and I'm sure he would do a totally perfect job of doing it. But he's not human. He has not experienced firsthand what it's like to struggle with sin. Jesus is the only one who knows firsthand how difficult it is to live in the fallen world. Hebrews 4 tells us he's been tempted just as we are, yet without sin. So I'm like, Jesus is worthy from that perspective. I'm looking to see, somewhere in my notes, I must have that Jesus is both fully God and fully man. If I can't find it here, I want to be sure that I say that, right? He's more than just human, but he's fully human, and that gives him an edge at being worthy. And then he's sinless, which gives him that. And then he conquered sin on the cross. Well, so Jesus turns, before I get there, Jesus turns to look at this Lion of Judah, and what does he see as he looks at the Lion of Judah? What's that? Yeah, a lamb that has been slain. And this lamb is, we were saying over here, normally slain lambs are laying out on the ground, right? And this lamb is standing there. And he's not sitting on the throne reigning as king. He is just a standing lamb who was slain, but now he's standing. Now in the Old Testament, what is the significance of a lamb? If you're Israel. What's that? Yes, a sacrificial animal. If we go back to the Exodus, and we see the very first lamb, the Passover lamb, and God was going to judge Egypt, and Israel at that point is in the nation of Israel. So in the nation of Egypt, they're located there. So they are fair game for judgment. And God tells them, you kill a lamb and you put the blood on the doorpost of your home, and when I see that, I will pass over. This lamb was killed, and so God's people didn't have to be because of this lamb. And so it's interesting, isn't it, that since Adam, all these people have been trapped by sin. All these people have been subject to judgment for sin. They're all subject to the death penalty. And now we have the Lion of Judah who didn't just live a perfect life. He willingly became a sacrificial lamb and laid down his life and took our death penalty on himself. And because he was God himself, in addition to being man, he has both the will and the capacity to take all our sin on himself and bear God's judgment. That's something none of us could do, right? Take the sin of like a bazillion people on yourself, we would be destroyed. And he took all that, and he could do that because he was God, and then bore that judgment. And then because the death penalty was fully satisfied, then he was resurrected and he raised from the dead. And in his resurrection then, he actually becomes person number one of the new creation. And so out of all the people in the world, out of all times, only Jesus, only this lamb is completely worthy to take the scroll and open it. Because while judgment has to come to restore creation to what it's supposed to be, Jesus personally provided the means to escape judgment for whoever trusts him. Right? Judgment is totally inevitable. But the Lamb who is going to unleash judgment is worthy to do it because before judgment, he actually went and provided redemption, the way to avoid judgment. And so perspective really matters because I hate judgment, right? I hate being held accountable. It's an unpleasant thing. I want to talk about it. I hate all that. But knowing that anybody can escape that judgment by receiving the forgiveness that the Lamb offers changes everything when it comes to judgment. And so we're going to see in Revelation, people are going to be experiencing all sorts of horrible things. And Christians will be right to ask, is God punishing me when these horrible things happen? Well, the heavenly perspective is that God loves the world, and for those who trust in Christ, Jesus already bore God's wrath on our behalf. So no, there is no more punishment for those who trust in Christ. So no matter what's happening, if we ever get this little thought in our brains, is God punishing me? The answer is an unequivocal no. God may have another purpose, but it's not punishment. So the Lamb is uniquely worthy to judge creation and bring about a new perfect creation. Now, did you notice anything else about the Lamb? I'm going to accelerate here. I'll just tell you, he has 7 horns, perfect power. He has 7 eyes, which then would tell us what about him? He sees everything, right? What a great judge. He's the all-knowing judge, the all-powerful judge. But he is worthy to open the scroll. And it's interesting that the world just conquers through raw power. And the Lion of Judah, he's got all power, right? But he actually decided to conquer by becoming a slain lamb. This is God's ways of conquering the world are very different than the world's. And this is another reminder to the churches, right? They are going to be facing persecution. And how do you overcome that? And when it comes to us today, we'll be tempted to do things like demanding our rights, shouting louder than the next guy, suing, whatever. Yes, Jesus took the humble approach, kept his mouth closed, and willingly went to death. And so we conquer, as we're looking through Revelation, we'll be conquering by imitating our slain Savior and being faithful unto death and knowing that God's got it and an eternity with the Lord awaits us. Now, as soon as the Lamb takes the scroll, guess what happens? What's that? More worship, yes. And they are singing about how the Lamb is worthy, and it's a new song because they are now reflecting on this new act that Jesus did to prepare everybody for judgment. And in his death, what do they say he accomplished? Yeah, he ransomed people from all over the world to be in his kingdom. Boy, when we talked about the synagogue of Satan, we talked about there's 2 different kingdoms, right? There's a kingdom of Satan and then there's a kingdom of God. And so through his death, by paying the price for us and saying, if you want that, you can have forgiveness, you can now be in God's kingdom. And so that's when he's saying when he ransomed people, he's paying the price so the people can move from the kingdom of Satan into the kingdom of God. And then what else did he accomplish when he did that? What did he make people? Priests, yeah. So that we now become priests to serve God, to show the world what God is like and bring people to the Lord themselves. Back to the lampstands, right? And then what else do they do? Yeah, they shall reign on the earth. In Revelation, we learned in 3:21, in the new heavens and new earth, we will absolutely reign with him. But there's still a present point, right, where we are still exercising dominion, even now on the earth. And ordering things and setting up things, making sure things are done as he would want them. And so as we exercise dominion on the earth, we're accomplishing his purposes in the world. And every time we do that, we are starting to show the world what God is like. We have the food pantry. We're showing the community that God cares for them and God loves them. It's just one example. And so then as we tell them about the Lamb, then we are now declaring that not only is our Creator worthy, the Lamb is worthy. And so we close chapter 5 with this other huge praise fest, right? All 4 living creatures, all 24 elders, and it says so many angels, they can't even be counted. It's like everybody is coming into this praise fest, and they're all declaring, not just the one on the throne, but the Lamb himself is worthy of everything that the one on the throne is worthy of. And then it goes to, so then it goes to everybody. And as we close chapter 5, the 4 living creatures are saying, amen, which means, so be it, right? Truly, Jesus is worthy. So we have Jesus, the one who began the new creation in his death and resurrection, is worthy to open the scroll and initiate judgment. And as he does that, he is going to start the process by which he will complete the new creation by the time we get to the end of Revelation. So that's chapter 4 and 5, this critical perspective of heaven. Yes, Lori. No, there's, this comes up in, I'll get to the answer. It has to do with, let me get you the answer, because I'm going to mess it up. It has to do with ancient beliefs about how the world is structured. Yes. I think it ties back to the flat earth theory. I'll come back with you. But here we have our fish, too. Anyway, okay. So we will end it. We have ended. Jesus is worthy. Did it ever occur to you that Jesus had such a special role that only he could fulfill, and that what a critical role that he fills. He's the one that makes it so judgment is fine, because judgment is moving us towards an awesome position, and judgment is fine because we don't have to fear it. Anybody can escape it. He offers that freely to us. So, send you to your second discussion groups, and we'll see you next week.